My family vanished during my son's surgery. 4 days later, Mom asked for dress money, so I sent 50 cents and said, "Buy a veil." I'll never forget the moment I understood that I had no one left. Not alone in the existential sense, though that feeling would come later. I mean truly physically alone, sitting in a sterile hospital waiting room at 2:47 a.m., watching the second hand tick forward on a wall clock that seemed determined to mock every anxious thought racing through my mind. My son, my 12-year-old son, Daniel, was somewhere behind those double doors, unconscious on an operating table, with surgeons working to save his life after a car accident I couldn't prevent, couldn't stop, couldn't rewind, no matter how many times I replayed it in my head. And my family? The people who were supposed to stand beside me through the darkest moments? They were nowhere to be found. Let me back up, because this story doesn't start in that waiting room. It starts months before in the slow accumulation of small betrayals that I kept excusing, kept justifying, kept explaining away, because that's what you do when you love people who hurt you. You make it make sense, even when it doesn't. My name is David, and I'm a technical project manager at a software company in Portland. Nothing fancy, nothing glamorous. Just steady work that pays well enough to support my son and maintain a decent life after my divorce 3 years ago. Daniel lives with me full-time. His mother, Jennifer, moved to Boston for work shortly after the separation. We maintain a cordial relationship, mostly for Daniel's sake, and she visits every few months. The divorce wasn't particularly dramatic. We simply grew apart. Different goals, different priorities, different visions of what life should look like. We handled it maturely, worked out custody arrangements without lawyers, and somehow managed to remain friendly. Jennifer sends child support regularly, calls Daniel twice a week, and genuinely seems invested in his well-being from a distance. My biological family, though? That's a different story entirely. My mother, Patricia, is 63 years old and has perfected the art of emotional manipulation over decades of practice. My older sister, Vanessa, is 39, for years my senior, and has always operated under the assumption that the world owes her something. My younger brother, Kyle, just turned 28, and he spent most of his adult life drifting between jobs, relationships, and various business opportunities that inevitably require financial backing from family members. And then there's Vanessa's fiancé, Trevor, who entered our family ecosystem about 18 months ago and immediately recognized it for what it was, a network of financially codependent relationships he could exploit. I should have seen the warning signs earlier. I should have recognized the patterns. But when you grow up in a certain type of family dynamic, those patterns become your normal. You don't question them, because questioning means acknowledging that the foundation of your relationships might be fundamentally broken. The financial requests started small, as they always do. 3 years ago, right after my divorce finalized and I received my portion of the assets Jennifer and I had accumulated, my mother called. Her car had broken down, transmission failure, the mechanic said, and she needed $2,800 to fix it. She was on a fixed income, she explained. Social Security doesn't stretch as far as it used to. She'd pay me back as soon as her tax refund came through. I sent the money that afternoon. The tax refund never materialized into repayment, but 6 weeks later, I saw Facebook photos of her on a cruise to Alaska with her sister. When I mentioned it, she acted offended that I'd even bring up money when she'd had such a difficult year and deserved a break. I let it go. That's what you do, right? You let it go. 8 months later, Vanessa called in tears. She'd been laid off from her marketing position, and her landlord was threatening eviction if she didn't catch up on 3 months of back rent for $1,500 she needed. She was interviewing like crazy, she promised. She'd have a new job within weeks and pay me back as soon as she got her first paycheck. I sent the money via wire transfer. She moved in with Trevor 2 weeks later into a spacious downtown loft and never mentioned the debt again. When I brought it up during Thanksgiving dinner, she accused me of being petty and holding her poverty over her head during what was already a humiliating time in her life. I apologized. Can you believe that? I apologized for asking about money I'd loaned her. Kyle's requests were more frequent, but smaller in scale. $600 for a security deposit on an apartment. $350 when his paycheck got delayed. $900 for an EMT certification course he was certain would launch his career. $1,200 when his roommate bailed and left him holding the full rent. I sent it all. Every time. Because that's what family does, right? Family helps family. Over the course of 2.5 years, I calculated later, when I finally forced myself to add it all up, I'd given or loaned various family members approximately $43,000. None of it was ever repaid. Most of it was never even acknowledged after the initial transaction. But I kept giving because I'd internalized a very specific message from childhood. Your worth is measured by your usefulness. Your value is determined by what you can provide. Love is conditional on your ability to solve other people's problems. My father died when I was 16, a sudden heart attack that shattered our family in ways we never fully addressed. My mother transformed her grief into a kind of martyrdom, positioning herself as the perpetual victim of circumstance who required constant support, constant validation, constant sacrifice from her children. Vanessa adopted a similar worldview, seeing herself as perpetually unlucky, perpetually wronged by employers, boyfriends, and a universe that didn't recognize her inherent specialness. Kyle, the baby of the family, simply learned that consequences were optional if you could find someone to bail you out. And me? I learned that being the stable one, the responsible one, the one who had his life together, meant being the one everyone leaned on until your own foundation started cracking. The weekend before Daniel's accident, I'd received 3 separate financial requests. My mother called on Friday evening, just as Daniel and I were sitting down to watch a movie. She needed $1,800 for new hearing aids. Her insurance wouldn't cover the ones she wanted, and she couldn't possibly function with the budget models. I explained that I'd just paid Daniel's orthodontist $3,200 for his braces, and I needed to be more careful with discretionary spending. She went silent for a long moment, then said, I suppose my hearing isn't as important as straight teeth for a child who already has everything he needs. It must be nice to have the luxury of saying no to your mother. The guilt settled over me like a familiar blanket. Mom, I didn't say no. I just said I need to wait until next month when… Forget it, David. I'll manage. I always do. Don't you worry about me sitting in silence, because I can't afford to hear the world around me. She hung up. I stared at my phone, feeling that old, familiar knot in my stomach. On Saturday afternoon, Vanessa texted, Emergency. Trevor's car got towed, and it's $680 to get it out of impound. Can you Venmo me today? We have a wedding venue tour tomorrow, and we need the car. I'd just seen on Instagram that they'd gone to an expensive steakhouse the night before. Trevor had posted photos of a $200 bottle of wine. But I sent $700 anyway, adding a little extra for the Uber they'd probably need to get to the impound lot. She responded with a thumbs-up emoji. No thank you. No acknowledgement. Just a thumbs up. On Sunday morning, Cal called. He'd gotten into some unspecified financial trouble. He was vague on the details and needed $2,500 by Monday, or there would be serious consequences. When I pressed for specifics, he got defensive. Why do you always need to know every detail? Why can't you just help your brother when he's in trouble? I've never asked you for anything major. That last line almost made me laugh. I'd given Kyle over $12,000 in the past 2 years alone. Kyle, I've helped you repeatedly, and you've never paid back any of it. I have my own expenses, my own child to support. Right, yeah, you have it so tough in your nice house with your fancy tech job. Some of us are actually struggling, David. Some of us don't have everything handed to us. I'd worked 80-hour weeks to earn my position. I'd put myself through night school while working full-time. I'd built my career through years of grinding effort, but in Kyle's narrative, I was just lucky while he was unfairly burdened. I can't send $2,500 right now, I said firmly. I can help you with $500 if it's truly an emergency, but that's my limit. He called me selfish and hung up. That night, as I was putting Daniel to bed, my 12-year-old looked up at me with those perceptive eyes that miss nothing and asked, "Dad, why does everyone always need your money?" The question hit me harder than it should have. "What do you mean, buddy?" Grandma calls and you look stressed. Aunt Vanessa texts and you sigh. Uncle Kyle calls and you sound tired. They always need money, don't they? I sat on the edge of his bed, searching for the right words. Family helps each other out sometimes. That's normal. But you help them all the time and they never help you. That doesn't seem fair. Out of the mouths of 12-year-olds. It's complicated, Dan. It doesn't seem that complicated to me. He shrugged. They use you. I kissed his forehead and turned out the light, but his words echoed in my mind long after he fell asleep. They use you. Simple. Accurate. Devastating. The accident happened on a Tuesday. Daniel had stayed after school for robotics club. He was building a line-following robot and was completely absorbed in the project. I picked him up at 5:30 p.m., and we stopped at the grocery store on the way home. Just a normal evening. Just normal errands. We were heading north on Morrison Street, waiting at a red light, when I saw the other car in my rear-view mirror. It was weaving slightly, and something about its trajectory made my stomach drop. I had maybe 2 seconds to process the thought they're not stopping before the impact. The sound of metal crunching, glass shattering, and the violent jolt forward as another car rear-ended us at what police later estimated was 45 miles per hour. Our sedan absorbed the impact. The rear end crumpled like aluminum foil. But the force was transferred forward and Daniel, sitting in the passenger seat, was thrown against a seatbelt with brutal force. The airbags deployed with explosive pops. The car filled with chalky powder. Time moved strangely, simultaneously too fast and too slow, as I turned to Daniel and saw him slump forward, unconscious, blood streaming from a gash on his forehead. I don't remember screaming his name, but I must have. I don't remember getting out of the car or pulling him free of the wreckage, but witnesses later said I did. I remember the ambulance arriving, the paramedics taking over, the controlled urgency in their voices as they stabilized his neck and loaded him onto a stretcher. "We're taking him to Providence, Portland," one paramedic told me. "Head trauma, possible internal injuries. You can ride with us." I climbed into the ambulance, holding Daniel's hand, watching the monitors track his vital signs, praying to a God I wasn't sure I believed in that my son would be okay. At the hospital, they rushed him straight to imaging, CT scans, X-rays, ultrasounds. I stood outside the radiology department, covered in dust from the airbags and Daniel's blood, shaking so hard I couldn't hold my phone steady. A nurse named Sophie appeared at my elbow. "Sir, you should sit down. Let me get you some water." "I need to call his mother." "I need to." My voice cracked. "Take a breath. We're taking excellent care of your son. Dr. Morrison is one of the best pediatric trauma specialists in the state. Let's get you somewhere quiet and you can make your calls." She guided me to a small consultation room, brought me water and a blanket, and left me alone with my phone and my terror. I called Jennifer first. She answered on the second ring, immediately sensing something wrong from my voice. "David? What happened?" "There was an accident." The words came out mechanical, disconnected. "A car hit us. Daniel's hurt. They're running tests now. Head trauma, they said. Possible internal injuries. I don't know how bad yet." "I don't." My voice broke completely. "Oh my God. Oh my God. What hospital?" "Providence, Portland. I'm looking at flights right now. There's one that leaves in 2 hours. I'll be there by midnight." "David, is he?" "I don't know. They won't tell me anything yet. Call me the second you hear anything. I'm packing now. I'll text you my flight info." She hung up, and I immediately dialed my mother. She answered after 4 rings, her voice casual, slightly annoyed at the interruption. "David, I'm watching my show. Can this wait?" "Mom, Daniel was in a car accident. We're at Providence, Portland. It's serious. Can you come? The pause lasted 3 seconds too long. Oh, honey, how serious? Head trauma. They're running tests. I'm alone here, and I'm scared, and I need someone here. Of course, of course. Let me just finish this episode, and I'll head over. Give me an hour. An hour. My son was potentially dying, and she needed to finish her television show. Mom, please. I need you now. David, I heard you. I'll be there soon. You're overreacting, I'm sure. Kids are resilient. He'll be fine. She hung up before I could respond. I called Vanessa next. It went straight to voicemail. I left a message, trying to keep my voice steady. Vanessa, it's David. Daniel was in a serious car accident. We're at Providence, Portland. Please come. I need family here. I texted her the same information, then called Kyle. He answered, and I could hear background noise, music, voices, laughter. Hey, bro, what's up? Kyle, Daniel was in a car accident. It's bad. I'm at the hospital. Can you come? Oh, shit. Yeah, man. That's awful. Is he okay? I don't know yet. They're running tests. Can you come to the hospital? Yeah, definitely. I'm actually out right now, but I'll head over as soon as I can. Probably like an hour or two. Let me just wrap up here. Kyle, please. I really need. I got you, man. I'll be there soon. Hang tight. He hung up. I sat in that small consultation room, staring at my phone, waiting for it to ring with updates from the medical team, waiting for my family to arrive, waiting for my world to stop spinning out of control. Dr. Morrison appeared in the doorway 20 minutes later. She was in her 50s, with kind eyes and a competent air that immediately made me feel slightly less terrified. Mr. Walsh, I'm Dr. Morrison. I've reviewed Daniel's imaging. Is he okay? Please tell me he's okay. He has a significant concussion and a subdural hematoma that's bleeding between his brain and skull. It's not large, but it's in a concerning location. We need to operate to relieve the pressure and stop the bleeding. The room tilted. Brain surgery? Emergency cranial decompression. It sounds frightening, but it's the standard treatment for this type of injury. Every minute counts with intracranial bleeding. I've scheduled the ORFR. She checked her watch. 30 minutes from now. I need your consent. She handed me forms. I tried to read them, but the words blurred together. Risks of surgery. Infection, stroke, seizures, brain damage, death. I signed everywhere she indicated, my hand shaking so badly the signatures were barely legible. Can I see him before surgery? Briefly. He's conscious now, but sedated. We need to prep him quickly. She led me to a pre-op area where Daniel lay on a gurney, looking impossibly small and fragile. A bandage covered the gash on his forehead. His eyes were half open, unfocused. Hey, buddy, I whispered, taking his hand. You're going to be okay. The doctors are going to fix you up. Dad. His voice was slurred. My head hurts. I know, baby. I know. They're going to make it better. Is Mom coming? She's on her way. She'll be here soon. And Grandma? And Aunt Nessa? The question stabbed through me. Everyone's coming, Dan. Everyone who loves you is coming. It was a lie, though I didn't fully know it yet. A nurse approached. Mr. Walsh, we need to take him to the OR now. I kissed Daniel's forehead, told him I loved him, and watched them wheel him away through double doors that swung shut behind him with a finality that made my chest constrict. Then I returned to the waiting room to wait, and wait, and wait. My mother had said an hour. It had now been 90 minutes, and she hadn't arrived. I called again. It went to voicemail. I texted, Mom, where are you? Daniel is in surgery. Brain surgery. I need you here. No response. I called Vanessa again. Voicemail. I texted, Vanessa, Daniel is in emergency brain surgery. Please respond. Please come. Nothing. I called Kyle. Straight to voicemail. I didn't bother leaving another message. The surgical waiting room at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday night was nearly empty. There was an elderly couple in the corner, holding hands and speaking in whispers. A middle-aged woman paced near the windows, her phone pressed to her ear. And me, alone, watching the clock, watching my phone, watching the doors for any sign of my family. Jennifer called at 11:47 p.m. I'm boarding now. We land at 12:35. I'll come straight to the hospital. Has there been any update? Still in surgery. No word yet. Have your mom and sister gotten there? I couldn't lie to her. No, no one came. The silence on her end spoke volumes. David, I'm so sorry. Just get here safely. I'll see you soon. At 12:15 a.m., I pulled up my mother's Facebook page, thinking maybe she'd posted something explaining her absence. A car problem, maybe, or some legitimate emergency that prevented her from coming. What I found instead made my blood run cold. Photos, posted 2 hours ago. My mother, Vanessa, Trevor, and Kyle at a restaurant called The Painted Lady, an upscale place downtown. They were dressed up, smiling, holding cocktails. The caption, written by Vanessa, read, "Celebrating Trevor's promotion. So proud of my amazing fiancé. Family dinner at the best restaurant in Portland." I read it 3 times, certain I was misunderstanding. They were at dinner, together, all of them, while my son was in brain surgery, and I begged each of them to come to the hospital. I scrolled through the photos. My mother, laughing, holding a martini. Vanessa, taking a selfie with Trevor, her engagement ring prominently displayed. Kyle, making faces at the camera with an appetizer plate in front of him. The most recent photo had been posted 18 minutes ago. They were still there, still celebrating, still together. My hands started shaking. Not the adrenaline shakes from earlier. This was different. This was rage, pure and cold, crystallizing in my chest. I called my mother. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. I called Vanessa. Same thing. Kyle didn't even ring, straight to voicemail, meaning he'd actively declined my call. I sent a group text to all 3 of them. I can see your Facebook posts. You're at dinner together, while Daniel is in brain surgery. I will never forget this. I watched the message show as delivered, then read by all 3 of them within 30 seconds. No one responded. At 1:52 a.m., Dr. Morrison emerged from the surgical suite, still in her scrubs, pulling off her surgical cap. I jumped to my feet. Daniel came through the surgery well, she said, and I nearly collapsed with relief. We successfully evacuated the hematoma and relieved the pressure. The next 72 hours are critical, but his vital signs are strong and his brain tissue looks healthy. Can I see him? He's in recovery now. Once he's stable, we'll move him to the pediatric ICU. You can see him then. I'd estimate another hour. Thank you. Thank you so much. She squeezed my shoulder. He's a fighter. You should try to rest. There's a parent sleep room on the 3rd floor if you need it. I couldn't rest. I sat in that waiting room, alone, as the night stretched toward dawn. Jennifer arrived at 2:10 a.m., running through the waiting room doors, her eyes wild with fear. When she saw me, she rushed over and I stood to meet her. Daniel's okay, I said immediately. Surgery went well. He's in recovery. She burst into tears, and I held her while she sobbed against my shoulder. We weren't married anymore. We weren't in love. But in that moment, we were united in our love for our son and our shared terror at nearly losing him. "Where's your family?" she asked after she'd collected herself. They didn't come. What? I showed her the Facebook photos. I watched her face shift from confusion to disgust. David, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. At 3:30 a.m., they led us into the pediatric ICU to see Daniel. He was unconscious on a ventilator with monitoring wires attached to every part of his body. His head was bandaged, and the beeping machines tracked every heartbeat, every breath. Jennifer and I sat on either side of his bed, each holding one of his hands, keeping vigil. My phone buzzed at 4:15 a.m. A text from my mother. "I'm sure Daniel is fine. Kids bounce back quickly. Get some rest and update me in the morning." No apology, no acknowledgement, just casual dismissal of the worst night of my life. I didn't respond. Daniel regained consciousness around noon on Wednesday. They removed the ventilator, and his first word was a groggy "Dad." I was there, right beside him. "Hey, buddy, I'm here. Mom's here, too." He smiled weakly, then drifted back to sleep. Over the next 3 days, Daniel's recovery progressed better than expected. By Friday, they'd moved him from the ICU to a regular pediatric room. By Saturday, he was sitting up, eating solid food, complaining about the hospital TV not having Netflix. Jennifer stayed the entire time, sleeping in the parent room, helping with Daniel's care, coordinating with the doctors. My ex-wife showed up in every way that mattered, despite living across the country. My biological family remained conspicuously absent. My mother texted once, "Glad to hear Daniel is doing better. Let me know when he's home." Vanessa sent nothing. Kyle sent one message on Thursday. "Hey man, sorry I couldn't make it to the hospital. Things got crazy. Glad Daniel's okay." Things got crazy. That's how he characterized choosing a celebration dinner over his nephew's emergency brain surgery. On Saturday morning, as Jennifer and I sat in Daniel's hospital room watching him play a game on his tablet, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "David, I need to ask you for a favor. Vanessa's wedding is in 6 weeks, and she's found the perfect dress, but it's $4,800. She's absolutely in love with it. But with Trevor's promotion celebration expenses, they've overspent their budget. Could you cover the dress as your wedding gift to them? I know money is tight right now, but family helps family, especially for such an important occasion." I stared at that message for a full minute, reading it over and over, certain I was hallucinating from lack of sleep. My son had been in brain surgery 5 days ago. Not one member of my biological family had visited him in the hospital. They'd actively chosen a restaurant celebration over being there for us during a life-threatening emergency. And now my mother was asking me for $4,800 for a wedding dress. I showed the message to Jennifer. She read it twice, then looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Pure fury mixed with protective rage. "Are you kidding me?" she whispered, mindful of Daniel nearby. "After everything that happened this week, she's asking you for money? For a wedding dress?" Apparently. "David, please tell me you're not going to send it." Was I? The old version of me, the version from a week ago, probably would have. That version would have felt guilty, would have justified it somehow, would have sent the money to keep the peace and avoid confrontation. But something had broken in me that Tuesday night. Sitting alone in that hospital waiting room, watching my family choose a party over my son's life, something fundamental had shattered and rearranged itself into a new configuration. I opened my banking app on my phone. I opened Venmo. I typed in my mother's name. In the amount field, I typed 50 cents. In the note field, I wrote, "For Vanessa's wedding dress. By a veil to match." I hit send. Jennifer's eyes went wide. "Did you just?" I did. For the first time in 5 days, I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who'd finally reached their limit. My phone rang 30 seconds later. My mother. I declined the call. It rang again. Declined. A text. "David, this isn't funny. Vanessa needs that money." I responded. "Vanessa needs to buy her own dress. I need family who shows up when my son is dying. We don't always get what we need." My mother, "You're being incredibly selfish. This is her wedding, the most important day of her life." Me, Tuesday was the most important day of MY life. Where were you? My mother. We already explained that. We had plans we couldn't cancel. You're holding a grudge over nothing. Me. Brain surgery is nothing. My mother. He's fine. You're being dramatic. Now stop playing games and send the money for your sister's dress. This is family. Something in me that had been bending for years finally snapped clean through. Me, no. My mother. Excuse me? Me, I said no. I'm done. No more money. No more bailing you out. No more pretending this is normal. You abandoned my son when he needed you most. And you're upset that I won't buy a dress? We're done. My mother. You're going to regret this. Me. The only thing I regret is not doing this years ago. I blocked her number. Then I blocked Vanessa's. Then Kyle's. Jennifer watched this all unfold with wide eyes. I've never seen you do that before. I've never had clarity before. Within an hour, my phone started buzzing with calls from unknown numbers. Vanessa calling from Trevor's phone. Calling from a friend's phone. Even some numbers I didn't recognize at all. I declined them all. The texts that managed to get through before I blocked those numbers too were escalating in tone. Vanessa, you're ruining my wedding because you're jealous that I'm happy. Kyle, you've always been an arrogant prick who thinks he's better than us. An unknown number. Probably Trevor. You'll pay for disrespecting my fiancé like this. I documented all of it with screenshots. Daniel was discharged on Monday afternoon with strict instructions for rest and follow-up appointments. Jennifer had taken the week off work and extended her trip to help with his care. We got him settled at home, and for the first time in 6 days I felt like I could breathe. That evening, after Daniel was asleep, Jennifer and I sat in my kitchen with coffee. Are you okay? She asked. Honestly, I don't know. Part of me feels liberated. Part of me feels guilty. Part of me is just numb. They really showed you who they are. Yeah, and I spent years making excuses for them. What are you going to do now? I don't know. They'll escalate. They always do. I was right. They escalated. On Wednesday, I received an email from my bank. There had been an attempted wire transfer from my checking account for $8,000. The bank had flagged it as suspicious and blocked it, but someone had tried to access my account remotely. I called the bank immediately. The fraud department confirmed that someone with knowledge of my account details, security questions, and personal information had attempted to transfer money to an account belonging to Trevor Mason, Vanessa's fiancé. They'd tried to steal from me. I filed a police report. I changed all my banking passwords, security questions, and set up two-factor authentication on everything. On Thursday, I received a call from Daniel's school. My mother had shown up, claiming she was picking Daniel up for a doctor's appointment. The school, following protocol, had verified with me first before releasing him. No, I told the administrator, do not release my son to her. I'll update his approved pickup list immediately. She's not authorized. They'd tried to take my son. On Friday, my doorbell rang at 7 a.m. I opened it to find my entire family standing on my porch. My mother, Vanessa, Trevor, and Kyle. We need to talk, my mother announced, pushing past me into my house uninvited. You need to leave, I said firmly. Not until you explain yourself, Vanessa snapped. She looked furious, her face flushed, her eyes blazing. You send me 50 cents for my wedding dress? You block all our numbers? You file a police report against Trevor. Trevor tried to steal $8,000 from my bank account. That wasn't stealing. Trevor shouted, You owe Vanessa that money. You owe this family. I don't owe you anything. My mother stepped forward, her voice taking on that familiar, guilt-inducing tone. David, honey, I think you're having some kind of breakdown. The stress of Daniel's accident has obviously affected you mentally. We're worried about you. We think you might need help. The only help I need is for you to leave my house. We're not leaving until we settle this, Kyle said. He was positioning himself between me and the door, a physical intimidation tactic. Guys, what's going on? Daniel's voice came from the stairs. He'd come down in his pajamas, looking confused and scared. Nothing, buddy. Go back to your room, I said. Is Grandma yelling at you? My mother immediately shifted her demeanor, her voice becoming sweet. Oh, sweetie, how are you feeling? We've been so worried about you. You didn't visit me in the hospital, Daniel said flatly. Children have a way of cutting through bullshit with surgical precision. Vanessa jumped in. We wanted to, honey, but your dad told us you needed rest and no visitors. We respected his wishes. That's a lie, I said coldly. Daniel, go to your room, my mother commanded, using her grandmother authority voice. This is my house. He stays if he wants, I countered. The argument escalated quickly, voices rising. Vanessa screaming about her ruined wedding. Kyle getting in my face about disrespect. Trevor making vague threats. My mother crying dramatically about how she'd raised an ungrateful son. And through it all, Daniel stood on the stairs, watching his father being verbally attacked by the people who were supposed to love him. Stop! Daniel suddenly shouted. Everyone fell silent. My 12-year-old son, still recovering from brain surgery, stepped fully into the room. You all need to leave my dad alone. Daniel, sweetheart, this doesn't concern you, my mother began. Yes, it does. You didn't come when I was sick. Dad called you, and you went to dinner instead. I saw the pictures. And now you're yelling at him because he won't give you money? That's not fair. Vanessa's face went white. Daniel, it's more complicated than... It's not complicated. You're mean to my dad. You use him. And now you need to leave. I'd never been more proud of my son. David, control your child, my mother snapped, her sweet facade cracking completely. My child is right. Leave. Now. Or I'm calling the police. You wouldn't dare, Vanessa hissed. I pulled out my phone and started dialing 911. They left. But not before Vanessa screamed, "This isn't over!" and Trevor made a comment about how I'd regret making enemies of family. I locked the door behind them, shaking. Daniel came over and hugged me tight. You okay, Dad? Yeah, buddy. I'm okay. Thank you for standing up for me. That's what family does, right? Real family. Out of the mouths of children. That weekend, I consulted with a lawyer named Marcus Chin. I laid out everything. The years of financial exploitation, the abandoned promises, the no-show at the hospital, the attempted bank fraud, the attempt to pick Daniel up from school, the hostile confrontation at my home. Marcus listened carefully, taking notes, asking clarifying questions. David, you have grounds for multiple legal actions here. The bank fraud alone is a serious felony. The attempted unauthorized school pickup could be considered attempted custodial interference. You could pursue restraining orders, press criminal charges, even sue for the money they've taken over the years. I don't want revenge. I just want them to leave us alone. Then let's start with restraining orders. If they violate those, the consequences escalate quickly. That might be enough to make them back off. We filed for temporary restraining orders against all four of them. My mother, Vanessa, Trevor, and Kyle, citing harassment, attempted fraud, and threatening behavior. The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks out. In the meantime, the harassment continued, but now it was documented. Trevor created a fake Facebook profile to send me threatening messages. Vanessa started calling my workplace, trying to get me fired by claiming I was mentally unstable. Kyle showed up at Daniel's school again, this time being turned away and photographed by security cameras. My mother took a different approach. She started a whisper campaign among extended family members, painting me as the villain. According to her narrative, I'd abandoned my family in their time of need, had refused to help my sister with basic wedding expenses out of jealousy, and was cruelly keeping my son away from his loving grandmother for no reason. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly started calling to lecture me. My aunt sent a long email about family loyalty and forgiveness. A second cousin posted on Facebook about how shameful it was when successful family members forgot where they came from. None of them knew the truth. None of them had been in that hospital waiting room. The restraining order hearing arrived. Marcus and I sat on one side of the courtroom. My mother, Vanessa, Trevor, and Kyle sat on the other, along with a lawyer they'd pooled resources to hire, a nervous-looking young man fresh out of law school. The judge, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, reviewed the petition. Mr. Walsh, you're seeking restraining orders against 4 family members. That's unusual. Explain. I took a breath and told the story. The years of financial exploitation, the hospital abandonment, the bank fraud attempt, the school pickup attempt, the home invasion and threats. I kept my voice steady, presented documentation for everything, and answered every question clearly. The judge turned to my family's lawyer. Response. The young lawyer stood, shuffling papers nervously. Your Honor, this is simply a family disagreement that's been blown out of proportion. Mr. Walsh has, unfortunately, chosen to weaponize the legal system against his own mother and siblings over a minor financial dispute. There's no real threat here, no real danger. Just a family that needs to work through their issues in therapy, not in court. A minor financial dispute, the judge repeated, looking at the documentation. Mr. Walsh alleges an attempted wire fraud of $8,000, supported by bank records. How is that minor? That was a misunderstanding, Your Honor. My client's fiancé, Mr. Mason, believed he had permission to access someone else's bank account and transfer $8,000 without explicit authorization. The lawyer floundered. It was a family emergency, Your Honor. What emergency? A wedding dress purchase. The judge's expression could have frozen lava. A wedding dress constitutes an emergency that justifies accessing someone else's bank account without permission. In the context of their family dynamic, Counselor, I suggest you rethink this defense strategy. What about the school pickup attempt? My mother suddenly spoke up out of turn. Your Honor, if I may, you may not. Please remain silent unless directly addressed. The judge's voice was ice, but my mother couldn't help herself. I'm his mother. I have a right to see my grandson. David is keeping him from me out of spite. Is your name on the approved pickup list at the child's school? Well, no, but then you have no right to remove him from school without the custodial parent's permission. Mr. Walsh, is the child's mother involved in this situation? My ex-wife Jennifer is fully supportive of the restraining orders, Your Honor. She's witnessed the harassment and agrees that our son shouldn't be exposed to this behavior. Where is the child now? With Jennifer at my home, Your Honor. The judge made several notes, then looked up. I'm granting temporary restraining orders for all 4 respondents. They are to stay at least 500 feet away from Mr. Walsh, his son, his home, and his workplace. No contact of any kind, no calls, texts, emails, social media, or third-party messages. These orders will remain in place for 1 year, at which point we'll review whether to make them permanent. A violation of these orders will result in immediate arrest and contempt charges. She banged her gavel. Next case. My family erupted. Vanessa screamed obscenities. Trevor shouted threats. Kyle lunged toward me, only to be blocked by a bailiff. My mother collapsed into theatrical tears. Security escorted them out while the judge watched with an expression of profound distaste. Marcus turned to me. That went better than expected. What happens now? Now, they have a choice. They can accept this and move on, or they can violate the orders and face consequences. Most people choose to move on. Most people. But I knew my family wasn't most people. I was right to worry. 2 days after the restraining orders were issued, Someone slashed all 4 tires on my car. No security footage, no witnesses, but the timing wasn't coincidental. 4 days later, I received a letter from an attorney representing Vanessa and Trevor. They were suing me for emotional distress and defamation, demanding $75,000 in damages for my false accusations that had destroyed Vanessa's reputation and caused severe psychological harm. Marcus filed a motion to dismiss it as frivolous and a violation of the restraining order, since the lawsuit constituted contact. The judge agreed and dismissed it immediately, adding another 6 months to their restraining order for the violation. A week after that, someone filed a false CPS report claiming I was abusing Daniel. The social worker who came to investigate was professional but thorough. She interviewed Daniel privately, examined him for signs of abuse, inspected our home, and spoke with his doctors, teachers, and Jennifer. "Mr. Walsh, I'm closing this case immediately," she told me after her investigation. This was clearly a malicious report. Daniel is healthy, happy, and well cared for. I'm noting in my report that this appears to be retaliation related to your family court matters. I'm sorry you had to go through this. Thank you for being thorough. One more thing, if another report comes in, we're required to investigate again, but I'll make sure the investigator knows the history. Document everything. This kind of harassment sometimes escalates before it gets better. She was right again. The harassment took on new forms. Someone created a fake review account and left 1-star reviews for my employer, claiming I was unprofessional and unstable. My boss called me in, concerned, until I showed him the restraining orders and explained the situation. He was understanding, but warned me to keep my personal drama from affecting the company. Someone, I suspected Trevor, started parking across the street from my house at odd hours. Not technically violating the 500-foot distance requirement, but clearly trying to intimidate me. I installed security cameras. The cameras proved their worth when they caught Kyle trying to break into my garage at 2 a.m. I called the police immediately. They arrived within minutes, arrested Kyle, and charged him with attempted burglary and violation of a restraining order. He spent 3 days in jail before my mother bailed him out. The legal consequences were starting to pile up. Kyle had criminal charges pending. Vanessa and Trevor's restraining orders had been extended. My mother had been warned by the judge that one more violation would result in jail time. But the psychological warfare continued. Extended family members kept contacting me, having been fed my mother's version of events. Some were genuinely concerned and willing to hear my side. Others were hostile, accusing me of tearing the family apart. I created a detailed document, a timeline of events with supporting documentation, and sent it to any family member who asked for my perspective. Some people apologized after reading it. Others doubled down, claiming I was exaggerating or lying. One cousin, Rebecca, called me after reading it. "David, I had no idea. Your mom said you'd refused to help with Vanessa's wedding and then made up lies about them to justify it. She said Daniel wasn't even that sick, that you'd blown it out of proportion. He had emergency brain surgery, Rebecca. He could have died." "I know. I'm so sorry. I should have called you directly instead of just believing her version. Is there anything I can do?" "Just don't feed into her narrative. If she brings it up, tell her you've heard my side and you're not getting involved." "I can do that." Having even one extended family member in my corner felt like a victory. Daniel's recovery continued well. He returned to school with some restrictions: no contact sports, no roughhousing, extra time on tests if he needed it due to lingering concentration issues. His friends welcomed him back with homemade cards and a robotics club meeting dedicated to finishing his project. Jennifer stayed for 3 weeks total, working remotely from my house, helping with Daniel's care, and providing emotional support that I desperately needed. The irony wasn't lost on me. My ex-wife was more family to me in those weeks than my biological relatives had been in years. "You know," she said one evening after Daniel had gone to bed, "I used to think your family was just quirky." demanding but well-meaning. I didn't realize how toxic it actually was until I saw it from the outside. I didn't either. You normalize what you grow up with. Are you doing okay? Really? I feel guilty, I admitted. I know I shouldn't, but I do. I keep thinking, what if I'd just sent the money for the dress? What if I'd kept the peace? Would any of this have happened? David, if you'd sent the money, it wouldn't have fixed anything. They would have taken it and come back for more. And you'd still be in the same cycle, just $4,800 poorer. I know. Logically, I know. But emotionally, you were trained from childhood to feel responsible for their feelings and their problems. That's going to take time to unlearn. She was right. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Saren Gwynn, who specialized in family trauma and codependency. The sessions were brutal, confronting the reality of my childhood, recognizing the patterns I'd accepted as normal, grieving the family I'd wished I had instead of accepting the one I actually had. It was painful work, but it was necessary work. You experienced emotional abuse, Dr. Nguyen told me in one session. The manipulation, the guilt, the conditional love based on financial usefulness, that's abuse. It's not physical, so it's easy to minimize, but it's real and it causes real damage. But they're my family. That's what makes it so insidious. We're taught that family is sacred, that blood is thicker than water, that you have to love and support your relatives no matter what. But that's not true. You don't owe anyone, including family, access to your life if they harm you. They'd say I'm the one harming them by cutting them off. Of course they would. People who benefit from a dysfunctional dynamic always resist when someone tries to change it. Your refusal to continue the pattern is threatening to them because it exposes the dysfunction they've been denying. 6 months after the restraining orders were issued, life had settled into a new normal. The harassment had mostly stopped. My family had finally realized that escalation only brought consequences. I'd heard through Rebecca that Vanessa had postponed her wedding indefinitely due to financial difficulties, which I suspected meant Trevor's promotion hadn't been as lucrative as they'd hoped, and they'd been counting on my money to fund their extravagant plans. Kyle had been sentenced to 6 months probation and mandatory counseling for the attempted burglary. My mother had apparently thrown him out of her house when he couldn't pay rent, leading to him moving in with Vanessa and Trevor, which from what I heard was going poorly for everyone involved. The legal fees and therapy costs had been significant, but my budget was healthier without the constant drain of family loans. I'd started a college fund for Daniel. I'd taken him on a weekend trip to the coast. I'd renovated his bedroom. I'd donated to causes I cared about. For the first time in my adult life, my money was mine to spend as I chose. Daniel and I developed new traditions: Sunday morning pancakes, Thursday evening robotics project time, Saturday hikes. We talked more, laughed more, relaxed more. The stress that had been a constant background hum in our lives had faded. Jennifer and I had developed an even better co-parenting relationship. She visited more frequently, and we'd even managed a few family dinners where we all enjoyed each other's company. "You seem different," she observed during one visit. "Lighter." "I feel different, like I can finally breathe." One evening, about 8 months after everything had started, Daniel and I were making dinner together. His job was chopping vegetables while I handled the stove. When he asked, "Dad, do you miss Grandma?" I thought carefully before answering. I miss the grandma I wished I had. But the real grandma? No, I don't miss being treated that way. Do you think she'll ever apologize? I don't think so, buddy. Some people never admit they're wrong. That's sad. It is. But we get to choose how we respond to it. We can't control other people's choices, only our own. He nodded thoughtfully. I'm glad you chose us. I'm glad I chose us too. The restraining orders came up for review at the 1-year mark. My family's attorney, a new one, more competent, argued that sufficient time had passed, that my family had learned their lesson, and that maintaining the orders was unnecessarily punitive. Marcus presented documentation of continued boundary testing. My mother trying to send gifts through third parties. Vanessa creating new social media accounts to monitor my activity, called driving past my house during his lunch breaks. The judge renewed the orders for another 2 years. This time there was no outburst. My family sat quietly, looking defeated in a way I'd never seen before. As we left the courthouse, my mother made eye contact with me for just a moment, and I saw something in her expression. Not remorse exactly, but perhaps the first glimmer of understanding that her actions had actual, permanent consequences. 2 years and 4 months after Daniel's accident, I received a letter, not through an attorney, not through a third party, an actual handwritten letter forwarded through Marcus's office to ensure it didn't violate the restraining order. It was from my mother. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Daniel was at Jennifer's house for spring break. I was alone. I made tea, sat down, and read, "David, I know I'm not supposed to contact you, and if this letter is a violation of the court order, I understand if there are consequences, but I needed to try. I've been in therapy for 8 months now, court-ordered, initially after Kyle's arrest, but I've continued beyond what was required. I've been forced to confront things about myself that I spent decades avoiding. You were right, about all of it. I was a terrible mother to you. I taught you that your worth was measured by what you could provide. I exploited your kindness and your sense of responsibility. I weaponized guilt. I chose a party over your son's life or death emergency because I was angry that you'd started setting boundaries, and I wanted to punish you. I've written this letter 17 times. I keep trying to explain, to give context, to make you understand why I was the way I was. My therapist keeps telling me that's not the point. That understanding doesn't equal excusing. That you don't owe me forgiveness. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even know if I deserve the chance to ask for it. But I need you to know that I see it now. I see what I did to you. I see how I damaged you. And I am profoundly sorry. Vanessa and Kyle aren't there yet. They're still angry, still blaming you for everything. But I hope, that maybe someday they'll get there too. You were the best of all of us, David. The kindest, the most patient, the most generous. And we treated that like weakness instead of strength. We took and took and took until you had nothing left to give. And then we got angry when you finally said no. I don't know what kind of relationship, if any, is possible between us now. That's your choice, not mine. But I want you to know that I'm working on being better. Not for you, you don't owe me anything, but because I need to be. Tell Daniel his grandmother is proud of him for standing up for his father. Tell him he's right about what real family means. I'm sorry, David. I'm so sorry. Mom, I read it 3 times. I cried. Not tears of joy or relief or reconciliation. Tears of grief for the relationship that could have been, but never was. I didn't respond to the letter. Not because I was still angry, but because I didn't know what to say. Some damage can't be undone. Some relationships can't be repaired. And that's okay. I kept the letter, though. Filed it away in a folder with all the other documentation from this chapter of my life. Evidence. History. Reminder. Daniel came home from spring break, full of stories about his time with his mom. We made dinner, watched a movie, and as I tucked him into bed, he asked, "Dad, are you happy?" "Yeah, buddy, I really am." "Me too." And that, after everything, after all the pain and betrayal and legal battles and therapy and tears, that simple exchange with my son was worth more than all the money I'd ever given my family. That was worth everything. 3 years after the accident, Daniel turned 15. We celebrated with a small party. Jennifer flew in. A few of Daniel's closest friends came over, and we had cake and terrible teenage jokes and video game tournaments. No grandparents. No aunts or uncles. Just people who genuinely loved Daniel and showed up for him consistently. "Best birthday ever," he declared, and I believed him. The restraining orders eventually expired, and we chose not to renew them. Not because we wanted contact with my family, but because we no longer needed the legal protection. We'd built a life that didn't include them, and that life was good. I heard updates, occasionally through Rebecca. Cal had finally gotten stable employment and was apparently doing better. Vanessa had married Trevor in a small courthouse ceremony, and they'd moved to Seattle. My mother lived alone, still attending therapy, volunteering at a food bank. Good for them, I thought without sarcasm. I genuinely hoped they found peace and growth. Just not with me. Not in my life. I've learned things through this experience that I wish I'd known earlier, but am grateful to know now. You can love people and still need to protect yourself from them. Family doesn't mean you owe unlimited chances or resources. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and your child is to walk away. And 50 cents can say more than 1,000 words. People ask me if I regret sending that 50 cents with the veil message. They ask if I was trying to be cruel or petty. I wasn't. I was trying to make a point that no amount of explanation could convey. That their request was insulting, that their priorities were grotesque, that I was done accepting unacceptable behavior. 50 cents was exactly what that request deserved. Not $1, not nothing. 50 cents and a message that I saw them clearly for the first time in my life. Daniel asks occasionally if I think we'll ever have a relationship with my family again. I tell him the truth, I don't know. Maybe someday if they do the work and prove through consistent action that they've changed. But that's not something we'll pursue. If it happens, it has to come from their genuine growth, not from our willingness to accept the bare minimum. For now, we have something better than biological family obligated to tolerate each other. We have chosen family who show up, who support each other, who celebrate successes and weather crises together. We have Jennifer, who's become one of my closest friends and best co-parents I could ask for. We have neighbors who became real friends. We have Daniel's robotics coach, who mentored him through difficult times. We have my therapist, who helped me rebuild my self-worth. We have Rebecca and a handful of other relatives who took the time to hear the truth. We have each other. And sometimes late at night when Daniel's asleep and the house is quiet, I think about that moment in the hospital waiting room. That moment when I realized I was completely alone. I'm not alone anymore. And neither is Daniel. We survived the betrayal. We survived the legal battles. We survived the grief of losing family we'd loved despite their flaws. We survived, and we built something better from the rubble. That's my story. That's how 50 cents and 7 words ended a lifetime of exploitation and started a new chapter of freedom. Was it worth it? Every single cent.